I would like to say that analysis of direct testimonies, the authors of which are participants and witnesses of the past events, allows the researcher to reach the social reality constructed by people, as well as their awareness, memory and reflection on their own experiences. My approach as sociologist of humanistic orientation results from the conviction that in order to understand human behaviors and attitudes, one has to get to know not only a given historical reality and real situations in which people happen to be, but one also has to reach the way in which they understood the reality, the meanings they have ascribed to respective elements of the world around. This task is to be served by the biographical approach in sociology and a method strictly connected with it of analysis of various types of direct testimonies specified by the pioneers of such an approach, Thomas and Znaniecki, as a method of personal documents. These researchers analyzed the empirical material reconstructing the past. On the one hand, to describe a specific, already undergone stage of the biographies of surveyed people, for example, authors of diaries, and on the other hand, to reach an insight into the historical process personally experienced by these persons. Direct testimonies, which we use in both historical and sociological research, are various personal accounts which constitute records of human experiences and reflect individuals' points of view. In the case of the research on the Holocaust, particularly meaningful is the outlook of those who were at the same time the participants of the occupation-related reality and the victims of the war machine and Nazi plan of the final solution of the Jewish issue. In this paper, I would like to ponder over the specificity of the direct testimonies related to the Holocaust, the testimonies used by those who deal with these problems, historians and sociologists. What sort of testimonies can they be? Firstly, these are the testimonies of people who died during the war but left their diaries, memoirs, letters or other personal notes. For subsequent researchers of the Holocaust, both historians and sociologists, they may constitute direct source of data for their analysis for many reasons. Not only because they come directly from those who were witnesses, participants, but first of all victims of the Holocaust. Also because they arose during the described events and experiences or immediately after them, but still during occupation period. Secondly, these may be testimonies of those who survived, testimonies of those Jews who managed to avoid the Holocaust. Apart from the mentioned types of testimonies, the catalogue of various direct sources includes also accounts, testimonies, and interviews. They could arise in different years which passed from the end of the war, also many, even a few dozens years after the time then these events and experiences happened. Thus, the directness of such sources refers not only to the moment, in which they arose, but the fact that they come from the first hand, from people directly, personally affected by the trauma of the Holocaust. I want to refer my reflections to the research which I carried out, the results of which were described in the book entitled The Holocaust and Identity, it was mentioned. In various types of texts included into the category of personal documents, which I quoted and analyzed in my book, I tried to read the unique account of a personal testimony, individual record of the Holocaust experience. I use in my research many different types of direct testimonies. From the point of view of the basic purpose of the research related to the issues of identity and changes in identity with regard to the selected category of investigated individuals, the basic source materials were interviews which I conducted with those who managed to survive the German occupation owing to adopted non-Jewish identity. On the other hand, to analyze and describe as comprehensively as possible the experience of the Jews hiding on the Aryan side under an adopted identity, but mainly those who managed to survive the war, I also used many other sources and direct testimonies. Thus, the first and in some sense basic in my work, a group of empirical accounts was formed by interviews aimed at those concrete studies and at providing some answers to the specific research questions. The second group of personal documents were the existing materials. It means accounts which had been collected and originated by specialized research and documentary institutions. The third group of sources involves also already existing materials, but such which arose independently of institutional requirements. These were the survivors' memoirs written as individual personal accounts or memories, both published and not published yet. However, all those types of materials which I analyzed arose post factum, sometimes many years after the war, as reminiscences of the past. Instead, the testimonies which arose during the occupation constituted an important source of information with the aim to outline historical background for the individual's events and experiences reconstructed in the accounts which appeared much later. I was aware of the differences between respective types of the materials on which I based my reflections. What these differences actually refer to. All the materials which I analyzed constituted the individual's testimonies and contained more or less rich or extended elements of their autobiographies. I have assumed that the importance of personal documents is determined by their cognitive value, the fact that through them one could reach the sphere of subjective reality available by means of not available, but other means, other methods or other sources. The basic difference between the types of materials which I used was the fact that some were created earlier for various purposes and irrespective of the research which I conducted, whereas other were formed later and to be used in those concrete studies. Only in the latter case, in the interviews carried out with selected interviewed persons, I could ask questions directly referring to the issues concerned. During the interview, I could also supplement the missing information and ask for additional explanations. The materials of the other types simply did not contain some of the other themes I was interested in. Some researchers pay attention also to the problem arising from the difference which exists between the written testimonies and oral accounts. Collecting the oral accounts on the past is sometimes included into a separate field of research on individual ways of experiencing historical events and macro-social processes, defined as the oral history. Such studies related to the past are conducted through quiet individual accounts, memories, and testimonies by way of remembering and recalling the events and life stories. One of the manual of qualitative methods specifies oral history deals, I'm quoting, oral history deals specifically with what people say about the past as they have experienced and seen it. The oral history interview is solicited by the researcher taking the form of a face-to-face encounter with an individual. The end of quotation. A life story is always an oral statement and as such is sometimes an object of revision and change. It may be subject to modifications with time, a change of circumstances in which a given person tells us about her or his life in connection with the moment in which the author of the story currently is, and also depending on the listener or addressee of such a story about the course of one's life. In the life story, its author refers to his own past experiences, but also describes the life from the present-day perspective and from the point of view of who he is presently at the moment of telling about the past. The oral account provides a more unhindered, but at the same time more chaotic course of narration. The differences between oral and written accounts may be also increased by the fact that those who wrote down their memories were more frequently educated people. Thus, the memories may reflect experiences of a bit narrower group of persons, as compared to the accounts and interviews submitted by people of more differentiated education, thereby representing a bit wider category of persons. In Lawrence Langer's opinion, in case of the written memoirs, we deal with the consciously presented reality. The author emphasizes that while the survival memoirs written by such authors as Primo Levi and Charlotte Delbo transform reality through style, imagination, chronology, or a current moral vision, oral accounts resist these organizing impulses and allow instead a kind of unshielded truth to emerge. A significant difference between a written memoir and told account, as indicated by Langer, would consist in that the narrator's imaginations are chained to memories and have little to do with sequences or chronology. But most the written memoirs memories maintain the chronology and actual sequence of events and facts. Another difference between memories written by a given author and memories told in form of an oral account or interview refers to the issue of authorship. I quit this problem. When we deal with events and experiences from distant past, the time which separates us from the reported reality may pose some problems. We could wonder how reliable the stories told decades after the years to which they referred are. Nehama Tek, in her consideration on various aspects of the survivors' experiences in the research on the Holocaust, where she reached mostly personal accounts and interviews, pay attention to the problem of time. How much does an individual remember after many years which lapsed from those events and experiences? The author's answer seems convincing. I quote, "Such events as these from the Holocaust period were the most dramatic and painful of a person's life, and as such are not apt to be forgotten. Time I believe, is most likely to cloud our memory for common events, but less likely to rob us of extraordinary experiences. The end of quotation. Many of persons I interviewed also shared this conviction that these dramatic events are well imprinted in the memory. They often did not remember all dates, sequence, or events, details from the occupation period, but on the other hand, they remembered with painstaking accuracy some situations from the past, especially those dramatic which they personally experienced.
Maybe you want to summarize.
Yeah. It's not easy to summarize because it's just a few reflections and remarks. Also, I would like to just present a small remark directly related to the research I carried out. The accounts submitted in the first years after the war by the survivors, mainly the accounts from the collection of Jewish Historical Institute, the group 301, and the text of interviews I conducted almost half a century after, may induce the conclusion that the contents of both types of the source materials appeared to be strikingly coincident. This means that the reader is mostly astonished not by the differences but the similarities of their contents. Both presented accounts and interviews contain the same elements of occupation experiences of the survivors who survived under their adopted identities. Aryan documents, appearance, stories, the problem of acquiring some abode and maintenance sources, etc. Also similar were the themes which appeared while telling about the different aspects of that experience, even though one could think that some of them could have been listened or distorted or omitted with time. For example, cases of blackmail, suspicious addresses to the authors of the accounts from people around them on Aryan paper, the situation arousing such a suspicion, etc. Yet, to me, the most striking seemed to be certain expressions used in the interviewees' statements, which we can also find in the accounts told immediately after the war. For example, masquerade, putting on a mask, playing a role, or comedy, telling fairy stories, fairy tales or stories. In this case, we could rather state that wording or phrasing used now from the perspective of time and in the result of reflections on the past experience, including the experience which I am particularly interested in, it means that of being someone else, should considerably differ from those used in the accounts from the distant past. Confirming this material analysis of direct testimonies in my research has been carried out from the point of view of asking about the essence and differentiation of the experience of being someone else during the war. I quoted in my book the survivors' statements on how they themselves treated their adopted identity, how they felt about it. They inevitably compared how they actually felt, playing a role, putting on a mask, or transforming themselves into a person whose identity they adopted. Okay. I will finish by two phrases. Okay. Okay, in my opinion, Holocaust scholarship on the memory of the Holocaust will continue even if fewer and fewer survivors remain among us. The testimonies given in different time and forms, as written accounts, memories, diaries, and oral interviews and accounts, audio and video, will remain as direct testimonies, as personal documents, the historical and sociological data and evidence of past events, even if the authors are not among us. These testimonies could be read and analyzed again and again by new generation of scholars.